Well, hey, everybody, it is Lisa Nearing from It's Not That Hard to Homeschool, and I'm so delighted today to have Nick Freitas here with us. He's serving in the Virginia House of Delegates. He is a former Green Beret, husband, father, homeschooler, coffee drinker, and chicken wrangler. So, Nick, I'm so glad to have you on the podcast today.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I mean, I'm definitely adding chicken wrangler to my official set of titles now.
Yeah. From Green Beret to chicken wrangler. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a jump, but we'd love to hear about it. So you take a stand for so many controversial issues and you're not shy about it. I mean, you're out there saying hard things every single day in Virginia as a voted representative of the people, as well as on social media. And I really appreciate that. But how do you decide what you're going to take a stand on and what you're not?
Look, I think so obviously my faith plays into my values and my worldview and whatnot. When it comes to a lot of things on the political side, I'm a big believer that, government has a role to play, but it's supposed to be a very limited one. So I place a high degree of value on individual liberty and personal responsibility. I think those two things have to go together.
Yeah.
And so it's not hard to find a whole host of issues that the government is, I would say, intruding on that I believe is way outside of its province.
Mm-hmm.
And when you place a high degree of value on individual liberty and on personal responsibility, you look at various government intrusions as not simply something that's inconvenient, but something that oftentimes is part of a much larger and competing worldview that I find to be problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And so this isn't just about, tax policy, right? Or regulatory policy. It's about a fundamental difference on what you see as the proper role of government and what you see as the function of government. I never forget, I had a student once ask me, Delegate Freitas, I'm really concerned about climate change and I want to combat that. And what do you think is the best way to do that? I said, well, honestly, I would go into engineering. I would figure out what are different ways that you could actually create a far more efficient solar panel or far more efficient wind energy, hydro. Yeah. I mean, basically, I would go into those fields where you could actually make this stuff a lot more marketable so that people are willing to use it and that it's economically viable and efficient. It's not like surviving off of government subsidies. Yeah. And she goes, no, I want a regulation. I said, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted to deal with green energy. I didn't realize what you wanted to do was punish people for non-compliance. So yeah, we can do a lot on that realm. What would you like to do? We can tax people. We can take away their money. We can take away their property. We could put them in jail. We could take away their kids. You want to take away their kids? And she just looked at me kind of horrified. And I said, and she goes, I don't want to hurt anybody. I said, well, I don't know what you've been taught about government, but the only thing that makes us unique is that we have the legal authority to use aggressive force and coercion in order to get what we want.
Yeah.
So now sometimes that's necessary, right? Yeah. If somebody's breaking in your door, you want the cops to show up, right? You want them to bring some violence with them.
Right.
But whenever we're looking about combating other problems within society, I think it would be better if we try to find peaceful, cooperative ways in order to come to the sort of conclusions that we want.
Yeah.
Before we start using the coercive ones.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's what I'm passionate about. And so when I see the government, intruding on areas of education, when I see them intruding on, someone's right to life, when I see them trying to systematically take away the means for people to be able to defend themselves or their property, I don't just see a policy difference. I see a fundamental difference in the way that we see humanity and the way that we define a free society. And it's important to me that people recognize that's what's being debated. It's not just superfluous. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in South Dakota, the land of the libertarian. So you're literally singing my song right now.
Yeah.
Totally with you. Why did you guys decide to homeschool your kids? I mean, have you done it for a while?
Oh yeah, we've gone all the way through with two of them. So my oldest daughter's 21, my son's 18. He just graduated, and my youngest daughter's 16. So we're kind of through most of it now. Yeah. Originally, it was not some sort of like conviction at the time. It was mainly out of necessity. I was getting out of the military. All of my oldest daughter at that time was going into first grade. We needed to figure something out because we weren't sure if I was going to move back to our home state or if we were going to come out to Virginia. So Tina said, all right, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start homeschooling. And once we figure out where home is going to be, then we'll enroll them in school. And initially we did that. We moved out to Virginia. We homeschooled for about a year until we found the place we live now. Tina said, okay, we're going to get them enrolled in public school now. And we did that for 1 year and immediately pulled them all out and said, nope, we're homeschooling.
What was it about that year?
My oldest daughter was in 5th grade. I remember sitting there one night teaching her how to fight because this one girl kept threatening her. And I said, well, sweetheart, you're going to have to learn how to fight. And a lot of parents are like, oh, I'll call the principal. Like, okay, we'll do that too. But I still want you to be able to defend yourself. So we did. We practiced how to, punch and how to block and how to defend. Yeah. And I remember telling her in that moment, I said, sweetheart, I do want to tell you one thing. I said, it sounds to me like the little girl that keeps threatening you probably comes from a difficult home life. To the extent possible, I want you to extend grace to her. Mm-hmm. But if she lays a hand on you, you're hitting back. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, Daddy, I can't do that. It's against the school's policy. I said, I will worry about the school's policy. Nobody will tell my daughter she's not allowed to defend herself. Nobody has that right. Nobody will take that away from you. I will see to it. And, she showed up to school the next day and the girl, decided she didn't really want to fight. But the point is that we were dealing with all these things. And look, my heart went out to a lot of the teachers. We had some great teachers that were really just trying to do the best they could. But the bottom line is that government education, and that's what it is. We call it public schools because it sounds nice, but it is a government-run organization. Government administered education was set up for mass production. I wanted my children to have an education that could be far more tailored to their individual needs, wants, desires, and goals. And homeschool afforded us the ability to not only, explain our values without sending them to another institution that was going to potentially contradict those values. Yeah. But it also allowed us to tailor their curriculum and what they were doing based off of what they wanted to actually do with their lives. Yeah. Yeah. And so we pulled them back out after that year and began homeschooling again. And I could write a book with all the things we would have done differently if we could. Yeah. But I will tell you this much. We have a great relationship with all of our kids. We're very confident in both their intellectual, emotional capabilities, their spiritual walk. We not only get along very well with our kids get along very well with each other. They have a very, very robust friend group. They are very used to talking to people older than them, younger than them, the same age as them. There is not a single class, course, theoretical advantage that the government-run school system that could ever entice me to do something different than what we did.
Love it. Are you training your own kids to go into politics in the military? Is that important to you?
Oh, no. We've always been adamant about. Now, my son is going into the military, but that is absolutely not because. It was not like an objective of mine that he go into the military. My oldest daughter had considered it, but she's getting married, actually. She's going to be getting married in June. What we did with all of our kids was we tried to instill a couple of things in them very early on. So elementary school, middle school, we focused a lot more on general education and exposing the different subjects, different experiences. And then when they started to move into high school, we moved much more over to this idea of what do you want to do? And can you feed yourself doing that? Right?
Great questions.
Yeah. The whole, follow your dreams. Okay. Well, is your dreams going to end up with you in a van down by the river or, are you going to be able to pay a mortgage? So we talked with all of our kids as they got to that age and they started to develop interests and capabilities within certain topics. And then we always ask the question, what's your dream? What would you really love to do? Like, okay, great. Does the dream feed you? Right? Can the dream feed you? If it can't, that doesn't mean give up on your dream. It just means you have to find something else that you're going to do that is going to be able to provide you the ability to chase that. Because when you're young, it's a great time. It's a great time to take some risks. You got a lot of runway ahead of you. And so like my oldest daughter is a perfect example of this. She graduated right when COVID hit. She didn't really want to go off to college because the things that she was interested in didn't really require a degree and it was just going to cost her a lot of money. She loved the theater. Now you want to talk about something where you probably are not feeding yourself with the theater, right? Probably not. Not impossible, but very, very competitive, very, very small number of slots. And so it's like, okay, do you want to go to college for theater? And one of the things we emphasize to all of our kids when they were young is I don't owe you a college education. Doesn't mean I won't help, but I don't owe it to you. So you have to do the work to set yourself up for that success. And then I am happy to assist in areas that are appropriate, but this has to be yours. So my daughter gets up. She's like, there's no way. She goes, there is no way I am going to drop $50,000 on a theater degree. She goes, I'm not doing that. She goes, what I want to do is I want to continue to pursue theater, but I think I'm going to go to cosmetology school. And she goes, I want to go to Paul Mitchell. It's a really good one.
Yeah.
She goes, because I know two things. One, I can always make money doing cosmetology.
Yeah.
I can either do it for somebody else or I can do it for myself. So it provides a lot of economic capability there and flexibility. When I start having kids, it's not a skill set that goes away. I can continue to utilize it and utilize it kind of in between taking care of kids and maybe making some extra money. I can do that. Plus, with makeup and everything else, it's an economically viable profession that puts me within the realm of theater. Because even if I can't get an acting job, I could potentially do something on, the makeup, the costume, or not costume, makeup and hair, stuff like that. So it's like, well, that makes a lot of sense. She goes, and I can knock out my license and everything in 1 year.
Yeah.
So she worked 3 jobs. She house sit, she pet sit, she worked the night shift at McDonald's. She saved everything, saved up everything. When she graduated cosmetology school, she paid it off. She was done and she was immediately in there making money, got a job, doing well. So that long story just to illustrate that the point was not to tell our children, I would really like you to go into politics. Or I'd really like you to be a doctor. I'd really like you to, go to this university. No, what I really want you to do is I want you to be capable of taking care of yourself. And I want you to honor God in whatever profession that you feel like you're being drawn to.
Yeah.
And both of my daughters were also very adamant about, they were both like, we want to get married and we want to have kids. And when we have kids, we want to homeschool. Both of my daughters have chosen career paths that put them in the path to be able to be economically viable, have capabilities, but also free them up to be able to stay home with the children and manage the home. And so I'm very proud of the fact that they have thought long term with respect to what their goals and objectives are, and then have sought out the education and the training necessary in order to help them facilitate that.
Yeah.
And so my 21-year-old daughter is about to get married. They've already bought a house. They don't live in it yet because they're not married, right? He lives there. She'll move in after they're married, but they've already bought a house, right?
That's
21
amazing.
years old. She's a homeowner.
Yeah.
And part of that is because she knows how to save. She knows how to budget. She knows how to do all those things very well. Dave Ramsey would be so proud, except that they didn't pay cash. But anyways, but so that was one of the freedoms that homeschooling gave us, was to be able to tailor their education toward their objectives, and as opposed to what the government said was necessary for X, Y, or Z.
Right. I love the fact that your kids are doing crazy things at a young age, even though if you watch the news, inflation's out of control, everybody's so worried about money, and your kids are going, yeah, we can still do it. I mean, like, we still live in a free America, like for the most part. Like, get a vision, make it plain, do the work, and do it. I love that.
It's absolutely. The other thing that was great about homeschooling was the emphasis we were able to put on entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Right. Not everything is about like, go get a degree and then get a job. I would say, like, I own a business, and one of the things that we've started to look at more and more is what we look for in an employee, or we look for in a contractor that we want to work with, is, do you share our values and can you do what we need you to do? I don't care about the piece of paper that you have with it. In fact, in some cases, if you have the piece of paper, I'm concerned that you were trained to do it in a way that we don't need, or that you're better at being an activist than you are an employee.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great point. Talk a little bit about the soft skills you're looking for too when you're hiring somebody. Are you looking for specific skills beyond academic knowledge, or skill-based learning or training?
I will tell you, one of the things that has become increasingly important to me is, obviously, if we're hiring for like a video editor, you need to be able to use the technology associated with video editing, right? That's a basic thing. If you have an aptitude for it and you're pretty good at it and you've done it, then we will plug you in to do certain work in order to get you to teach you the way that we want it done for what we do in our content. Right. Whereas if you come in with these preconceived notions of how something is done, that might not work for us. The 3 other things that are really important to us is culture, right? Do you fit in with this group and what our mission is? If you do, you're going to have a great time. You're going to have a great time. If you don't, this isn't the place for you. Right. And let's just be honest about that, because again, we are not inviting you into what we have built so you can change it based off of what your sociology professor told you. Like, I don't care. The other thing too is you got to be teachable. Obviously, you got to be teachable. I joke around with my co-host, who's one of my best friends, and I remember telling him once, I'm like, Christian, you want to know what is one of the most valuable things about you? I mean, you're a smart guy. You're a smart guy, but you drive me nuts sometimes. You can take a chewing out and then get back to work. It is amazing how fragile people have become.
Mhm.
I grew up, my mom was a nurse. My dad was a homicide detective.
Wow.
There was not a lot of, there was a lot of direct communication, right?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't mean, it was just direct.
Yes.
And then I was a Green Beret, right? There
Yeah.
wasn't a whole lot of
Yeah.
struggle sessions where we sat around and talked about our feelings, right? Like that did not happen, right?
Yeah.
And I love working with people that are passionate about what they do, will
Mhm.
work on it intensely. I don't mind getting in a chew out session with
Yeah.
somebody, and I don't mind them hitting back, right? I
Yeah.
don't mind that,
Right.
is as long as, okay, after this, no
Yeah.
hurt feelings, and we get
Yeah.
back to mission because we're still on the same team.
Yeah.
So that's sort of resilience,
Yes. Mhm.
emotional maturity. That's become super important to
Mhm.
me.
Yeah. I
But
love
yeah,
that. Angela Duckworth's Grit, for anybody listening, great book on resilience. But yeah, not taking everything so personally. You've got to learn how to fail forward, because if you can't fail forward, you're done. If you
yeah,
can't fail and get up and keep going, you're done.
yeah.
What was harder, being a Green Beret or being a dad?
Oh, hard in different ways. Being a Green Beret never moved me to tears. Being a dad, and a man that doesn't cry, right?
Yeah.
I don't cry much, and it's not because I don't think that there are appropriate times to cry. It's just I
Yeah.
believe that one of the jobs of a man is to keep your emotions under control.
Mhm.
You are supposed to be the rock in the storm for the people around you that you care about, that you love, and you can't do that if you're constantly breaking apart when
Yeah.
things are tough.
Mhm.
Um, Physically very, very demanding, going through ranger school and sniper school and special forces qualification course
Yeah.
and combat, right? Physically demanding, also very rewarding. But being a father is different in the sense that when you're in combat, obviously you feel a sense of responsibility for the people around you and for accomplishing the
Mhm.
mission, and
Yeah.
that can be very intense. But
Mhm.
you're also dealing with other people that are trained professionals. When it's your kids, right, you're responsible
Yeah.
in large part to raise them up in the way that they should go.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more at times, a sense of like guilt or whatnot when you feel
Yeah.
like you've dropped the ball.
Mhm.
um Overall, being a husband and being a father is the more demanding, but it's also the significantly more rewarding. And I
Mhm.
find that that's true of a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
The things that
It's
demand
true.
the most of your attention and your
Mhm.
expertise and developing of capabilities
Yeah.
are also going to be the things that you look back on and say, that was more worthwhile than anything else I've done. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that answer. What do you think is one of the most important things for your kids to learn? What is the big lesson you want your kids to not ever forget?
oh gosh, the relationship with God is the most important thing. As I look around at what's going on with kids today, I see a massive identity crisis. And I think a large part of it is because they haven't been taught that they're not an accident. They're beautifully and wonderfully made
Yeah.
in the image of God, and they have a unique purpose that needs to be fulfilled. And they're going to be the ones to do it.
Yeah.
And when you try to replace that with something else that is either superficial or just based off of preferences or pleasure or a quest for power or success, none of it's fulfilling.
Yeah.
None of it's fulfilling. There's always an emptiness that's left there. And the reason why the reason why I wanted my kids' faith to be their own and not just simply something that we taught at them, was because I know based off of what's going on in the world right now that they're going to face some really trying times. I was speaking at a homeschool graduation the other day, the strangest commencement address some of them have heard, because I said, I remember the first time I held my little girl. And when you have that child, your thought shifts to, I need to make the world a better place for them. That's
Yeah.
my job. That is my goal. My goal is to make this world better for them, safer for them.
Mhm.
And then I looked at all the students. I said, I'm going to talk to you like adults. Yeah, we didn't. The
Mhm.
world you're inheriting is not better than the one that we inherited.
Mhm.
That's the truth.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean we didn't try, and it doesn't mean we're not still trying. It doesn't mean we won't continue to. But I'm not going to lie to you and tell you it's better now. It isn't.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but the bottom line is that you have something. If you are secure in your faith and what you believe, you have something that provides not only identity, not only purpose, not only meaning, but it provides you the peace which surpasses all understanding.
Mhm.
And that's pretty critical,
Yeah.
because there's going to be a lot of things going on in the world right now, a lot of chaos going on,
Mhm.
where it's going to affect you, right?
Yeah.
It's going to affect you. You can't stop that, but it's not going to destroy you. In fact, you're
Yeah.
going to be the one that's strong in the storm. And when everyone else starts to figure out that they've been lied to, they're going to
Mhm.
stop listening to experts. They're going to stop listening to media personalities, and they're going to start listening to the people that seem to have everything right in the midst of the chaos. I said, so as much as I would have loved for my children to grow up in a time better than the one that I inherited, I also remember that they were born for such a time as this.
Right.
Right?
Amen.
God was not confused about when they would
Right.
arrive. Being secure in that, secure in that identity. And I think the other thing that I would say, if I could add just one other caveat here,
Yeah.
being secure in the knowledge that there is such a thing as objective truth, and
Yeah.
your job is to advocate for truth. It's not to attempt to force truth to bend its will to you.
Right. Amen.
And to be willing to stand up for it is going to, at times, increasingly require courage, being able to speak the truth in love, but to do so courageously, and to know that there are certain things that are worth fighting for, sacrificing for, and even dying for, is very, very important. And that might sound like kind of a harsh lesson that you want your kids to learn, but I learned it. It's something I look back, and whenever the times are trying, and whenever there's been times where I either thought I was going to die, or just difficulty within the political realm or in politics or financially or whatever it was, at no point did I ever question who I was, who I belonged to, and that I had purpose.
Yeah.
My wife and I were both desperate that they would all have that as well. And
Yeah.
and they do. And so,
What a great gift.
yeah.
Yeah. I do agree with you. It seems like so much of our youth, they're just really struggling with who they are and why are they here. I don't think parents can tell their kids enough that you're here for a purpose. It wasn't a mistake. And for such a time as this, absolutely. What has been the hardest part of your homeschool journey?
The hardest part is when your kid struggles with a particular topic for which you do not have the requisite knowledge or aptitude in order to help them with.
Yeah.
And so you're going through this process of trying to find like the right curriculum, or maybe trying to find the right co-op or tutor or whatnot, because nobody wants to see their child struggle. Right. And then wondering, constantly wondering, am I doing the best thing for them? Am I doing the right thing for them? My gosh, if they were at the public school, then, or they would have all these other facilities, and they'd have all these other, resources, and they'd have all of these other things. And it's like, yes. And they would have everything else that comes with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so that's the thing. Tina and I try to be we just did an episode on the top 10 reasons not to homeschool.
That's
and
great.
It was tongue in cheek, right? Like every reason was, an actual reason to homeschool. But Tina was adamant about like, look, I don't want anyone to believe that this is just easy and that it just solves all your problems. It requires a great deal of work. You're going to second guess yourself. The only thing that we can say is that now that we are on the other side of that journey, we look back and a ton of things I'd do differently.
Yeah.
But the one thing I wouldn't do differently is not homeschool. I would not. I would homeschool again all over. What I would say is like, look, constantly seek and strive to improve upon what you're doing.
Yeah.
But don't doubt that there's so much advantage just in you recapturing all of that time with your child that would have been lost forever. You don't get that back.
Exactly. Yeah. I read recently that 85 or 90% of the time you spend with your kids happens before they turn 18. So that's perspective for you. Yeah.
Our family lives on the other side of the country, and I remember my wife's folks hadn't been out for a while. She called up her mom one day, like this is like classic guilt trip. This is some top level wife guilting right there. And she goes, well, Mom, 17 more times. And her mom goes, what are you talking about? She goes, realistically, based off of time frames and the amount of times that you come out here and whatnot, you're going to see us 17 more times, and that will be it. And her mom got on a plane like 3 months, like a month later, right? Came out.
Top level. Okay, that was really good.
Yeah.
If you could change anything about America right now, what would it be?
We are currently living in a post-Christian America.
Yeah.
And look, I don't think it would have been fair to say that like legally we were a Christian country. There's nothing that we've ever put down legally into paper that said we were a Christian nation. But culturally we always were. And I don't mean cultural Christianity in the sense that it was just there, but I meant that there was socially a shared commitment to certain values that were rooted in that. And there was also, I think, a healthy respect for the idea of rugged individualism with a sense of community.
Yeah.
And I think that has largely been replaced with something of a hedonistic, at times almost seems nihilistic. And on top of that, this increasing desire for the government to essentially play the dominant role in everybody's life. I think what's important to understand about that is that the United States was founded on certain basic commitments that were rooted in Christianity. It was also rooted in a belief in individual liberty, personal responsibility, property rights, free markets. These things are essential to who we are as a country. They're not negotiable. The United States is not just a white building in Washington, D.C. It's not simply Congress or the presidency or the judiciary. Being in a free country, it was always understood that being in a free country was so much more than getting to vote for politicians every 2, 4, and 6 years. It really was about this idea that there were certain shared values, and that among those, it was both your right and your obligation on some level to live your life, to pursue happiness, to do so in an upstanding way, and to do so without infringing on the rights of others.
Yeah.
And I think that is being replaced, or has in many respects been replaced, with more of a collectivist attitude. And historically, we've seen where that goes. So I would love to see a renewed cultural commitment to Christ, and I would love to see a renewed commitment politically to the idea that government has a very, very small, important yet small role to play in our lives, not because there aren't a lot of problems that we need to address, but because we recognize that the best way to address those problems is by free people working in voluntary cooperation, not a subset of those people operating based off of coercion.
How do you see common Americans doing that? How do you see, middle-class America trying to bring about a revival, if you will, both maybe religiously, but politically? This is a loaded question for the end, but
we could win it all in 1 or 2 generations. And the reason why is because we have more kids.
Yeah. Okay.
This is let's face it, when you're talking about, a constitutional republic that operates off of, democratic elections, numbers matter, and we have more kids. The problem is that a lot of people that believe this way, that see the problems and that want to fight it, get so consumed by the political realm or so consumed with aspects of social media. And then what they do is they hand their children off to the same government that they view with such skepticism for their education. And what ends up happening is we end up, trying to elect better people. And look, that's important. That's necessary, right? I'm not saying we should ignore the political, but do not ignore or neglect the things for which you have the most control in favor of the things for which you have next to no control.
Right.
You are 1 vote for the president of the United States. Okay. Maybe you gave some money, maybe you door knock, maybe you did whatever. Okay. But what do your kids believe and why? Right? Why can they go and articulate what is it their beliefs, or is it just something that you've taught them to believe while they live under your roof?
Yeah.
There are things that I could look back on my life that somebody might say that was reasonably successful. Being a Green Beret, being a combat veteran, getting elected to the Virginia House of Delegates, passing legislation.
Yeah.
And I look back on those things with a certain sense of accomplishment. They pale in comparison, almost to the point of insignificance, on the duties and responsibilities that I had as a husband and a father, and the fact that I can say with confidence that my 3 children understand their faith, understand their values, that they are theirs, not simply something that I have imposed upon them, that they're able to articulate them, and that they are ready to go off into life believing in them in such a way as to be willing to fight and sacrifice for them. That is a far greater contribution than any bill I might have passed in the legislature. And that is within the means and the abilities of everybody out there. So don't neglect that.
Right.
Just to go volunteer for a campaign. If you can do both, do both.
Yeah.
Right? That's great. But don't neglect one at the expense of the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Education is a transmission of culture. If you're educating your kids and transmitting the culture, you're going to affect not only the next generation, but the next one after that.
Yeah.
What's a great book you would recommend to families and parents?
Oh gosh. Well, like the all-time bestseller is the Bible, clearly. I think there's a lot of books out there. It depends really on what the topic is. So obviously I work in politics. I get asked a lot about political books or economics books. The Law by Frederick Bastiat is one of the greatest, I think, that has ever written on political philosophy. It's only about 75 pages. Absolutely incredible book. Anything by Thomas Sowell. I absolutely love Thomas Sowell.
Why didn't he run for president?
Oh my gosh, that guy's incredible. I fanboy over Thomas Sowell. I think C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity was an excellent book. Gosh, there's so many out. The Road to Serfdom by Hayek.
That's a good list. We'll put those in the show notes. Nick, Freitas, it has been a delight to hear from you. And we really just appreciate the good work that you and your wife are doing and your family, both in Virginia and really around the world. Social media gives us a big reach. And honestly, I laugh out loud at your chicken jokes and your coffee mugs with regularity. So keep up the great work.
Will do. Will do.
Yeah. But thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.